Today, I am joined by Bishop Thomas Bickerton, the Bishop of the New York Annual Conference and President-designate of the Council of Bishops. He is also liaison to the Commission on the General Conference. Good morning, Bishop Bickerton.
Hi, Kennetha. It's great to be with you today.
I've got a few questions for you. If the coronavirus pandemic restricts either a large group gathering of 1,500 or more people, or the participation of folks from anywhere across the global connection, is it prudent or fair to hold the in-person General Conference as planned in Minneapolis in August, September of 2021?
Well, personally speaking, I don't believe so. My conviction is if there is one person or one delegation who can't fully participate in the discussions that in particular relate to the future of this denomination, then I believe we have a justice issue on our hands related to the fairness of our process as a connectional church. I also have serious questions related to colonialism if we believe that it's prudent for U.S. delegates who will have easier access to travel, vaccines, and safety protocols to gather without the entire United Methodist global family having the same ease of access.
So if it became prudent or more prudent to not do a General Conference at that time, when would be the most opportune time to make that decision about either to do it or not do it, or change the format or cancel the event altogether? And who makes that decision?
Well, I think that's a question that's really out there in the United Methodist airwaves. This is clearly a matter for the Commission on the General Conference to decide. Paragraph 511 of the Book of Discipline is very clear that the Commission selects the site and sets the dates of the General Conference, and they can do that up to 4 quadrennium in advance by Book of Discipline. You know, while I understand the anxiety that many people have about whether or not the General Conference can even think about having an in-person General Conference in Minneapolis next August and September, having served on the Commission this past quadrennium, I understand the complexities related to contractual agreements, financial obligations, visa acquisitions, etc. And as liaison with the Council of Bishops and the Commission, I've urged the Commission to be aggressive and intentional about the work that will be needed to consider whether or not a virtual General Conference can happen, and what business can reasonably be considered if it has to be in a virtual format. And I think the discernment around those decisions really falls into several distinct categories. First, can we reasonably consider having an in-person meeting? I think the final decision on that should happen absolutely no later than early into next year. That will give us as a commission an opportunity to see what happens with the U.S. elections, how the second wave of the virus is being managed, what the status of a vaccine is, what plan is being considered for global distribution of a vaccine. The second piece of discernment is, can we reasonably consider a virtual General Conference? And I believe that's the right way to phrase it. You know, given the remote locations of many of our global conferences, can we reasonably expect internet access, bandwidth, technology, translation? Those are just a few of the issues. Can we expect them to be equally and fairly available? If that can be worked out to everybody's satisfaction, then the question is, what essential business can reasonably be considered in that platform? To what extent can we, either in a plenary or a legislative committee, have fair, balanced, coherent, and meaningful conversations around the future of the church, the budget of the church, the election of a judicial council? And then the third piece is, what's the impact if there's another postponement? You know, how does that affect things like the jurisdictional and central conference meetings that are dependent upon a general conference to determine the number of bishops that the jurisdiction and central conferences are eligible to elect? The retirement of bishops, that can only happen at a regularly scheduled session of the jurisdictional or central conference. Episcopal coverage of areas once retired bishops retire. Elections of judicial council members and membership of certain lay clergy and bishops on general agencies, commissions, and committees that are completely dependent on the General Conference. Not to mention a budget for the next quadrennium, which that's an issue too.
Thank you, Bishop Bickerton.